to the Athletes in Motion podcast, From Race to Recovery, with your hosts, Tom Riegel and Kenny Bailey.
Hey, good morning, Kenny. How are you today?
I am fantastic, Tom. How are you?
I'm fantastic as well. We're back on with Karelle Laurent, talking all things nutrition today. So we've thank you for coming back on. Karelle's become a regular because we like her so much. She's so smart. And she's really helping us tremendously, especially as we go through the season. So we've been focusing on different parts of the season and different ways to eat healthy. So Karelle, welcome back. Thanks for taking time to be with us again. So we wanted to talk today. Well, I have to do the business side of things, right? I have to do make sure to subscribe. There'll be buttons up. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, put that on there. It'll give you a little notification, when we, put our new episodes out. Give us 5 stars, thumbs up, all that good stuff. That helps bounce the algorithm up a little bit higher, gets this out to more people. We've had some really good downloads. I forgot to check the countries before we did this again, but we want to still say hi to our friends in Frankfurt, Germany.
Hey, Jerry.
You guys keep listening and watching, so we appreciate you and everyone else. So let's get into it. Like we're in the middle of the season now. We're deep into June. This episode is probably going to come out one more week. So yeah, deep into June here, and we're in racing season. We're full on. Struggling with trying to get our training going through and trying to eat the right foods. I know Kenny and I have talked about horrible gel experiences in the past, eating the artificial stuff and trying to get through this. So, Karelle, walk us through what do we need to be doing this time of year as we're training? Because we've got our racing, but we also need to be eating better quality food for our training. So let's start there. Let's start at the training part, and then we'll walk into what we're going to eat for our actual races. So give us some help. Kenny and I are struggling.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you for having me again on the podcast, Tom and Kenny. All right. So yes, it is. We are rightly into the deep season of racing. But before racing, as we're saying into training, we need to really nourish ourselves with whole food. This is really a primary key. Why is this important? I know we're just probably struggling with time at that moment because we are increasing the volume. We're probably looking at a few more hours, juggling work, juggling family, juggling deadline with work, and end of school year if you have children, where it just adds to the calendar. But this is a really important priority: sleep and whole food, because it will give you the nutrient that you are losing throughout the training. So as you are increasing volume, you're producing more energy, you're breaking down muscle, you're repairing muscle, you need more nutrient. You need to have this coming from whole food. There's not going to be supplement that's going to help you with this. The supplements will be having a small margin help, but food is going to be your. Again, we're looking at, I think we spoke about that last time, the pyramid. It's the foundation of that pillar of the pyramid. And that's really, really important. So when we're looking at whole food, we're looking at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and potentially 2 snacks that are going to be really your source of food. Okay. On top of that, you have your nutrition during the effort. And that's something we can discuss separately. So anticipate your meal. So if we look at your meal for day to day, anticipate, maybe make a list on the Sunday when you are, chilling on the sofa and catching up on what's going to happen this week. Just take a little bit of a pen and paper or your phone. And what am I going to eat this week? What shall I order? You can do your food delivery, or you can go to the grocery stores, but anticipate of what are the key food you can have in stock, to make sure you can maybe spend your Sunday evening cooking a couple of meals or doing a little bit of batch cooking. And that could be, cooking a whole chicken or cooking a couple of chicken breast, maybe cook a salmon at the same time, have that in Tupperware, in glass Tupperware. Maybe you can make some quinoa So you'll have the quinoa or rice, whatever you prefer, or even roasted potatoes. It's absolutely fine for me. But those are going to be your carbohydrates. So your quinoa, your sweet potatoes, your rice. It's going to be your carbohydrate, your complex carbohydrate, giving you a really good source of energy food. Your rice, your chicken, your fish, that's going to be your protein. They will be important for your repair. And then next to that, you have your vegetables. Your vegetables going to have different roles. They will be a source of fiber, helping with nutrient intake as well. And that's really important to have in terms of reboosting that. Okay. So it could be, there's always easy ways of getting vegetables. You can have things that are already prepared. So cherry tomato, cucumber, that's so easy to have in the fridge, and you can just slice cherry tomato in two and you've got that in your little lunchbox or your ready meal. You can have cucumber, that's so easy as well. Sometimes if you have a nice grocery stores next to you, you already have shredded carrots that is readily available. So that's quite easy. You can look at, because shredding carrots can take a bit of time, and that I can understand that it's taking time, that might not be easy. You can make a couple of hard-boiled eggs, so all of this anticipation could be really practical. You can cook as well, a couple of broccoli, a bit of cauliflower, you put that in another Tupperware. So when you are ready to eat your lunch and you've done your training and you're between two calls, or you're about to go to work and you want to bring your lunchbox because options at works are limited, you can just pull a little lunchbox together, have a bit of quinoa or your rice, you have a bit of cherry tomato, a bit of those crudités we talked about, a couple of broccoli, then you will have your protein, your chicken or whatever, drizzle olive oil, and that's just amazing. That's all you need. So the question is, it's easy to do once you have been able to anticipate and plan that out ahead. And that will give you so much more than just going across the street and buying a sandwich. That sandwich is not going to give you as much support. And how you're going to see the difference is the recovery, your ability to follow the training plan that your coach is giving you. Because if you eat those nourishing food, you are going to go into your training with a much more stable energy level. And that's going to help you to be able to commit to your training plan. Now we go to your second question, Tom, is you interrupt me. I'm talking too much.
Let's go back. Let's go back 1 second before we get onto that, because it's basically just simplifying everything. And I know my wife and I we'll get into a rhythm of doing some meal prep. And that's fantastic for me to eat during the day, because my day is very busy. I have clients coming in and I don't always get time for lunch. So I need to have that readily available. Yeah. It's when we get out of that rhythm that it goes off the rails, and it just and then it's like pizza and, grabbing whatever. And at that point, it's just calories. Because I'm crashing at that point. I'm mentally fatigued trying to, go through and do bike fits, and I'm just trying to eat calories, and that's where everything goes off the rails for me. And that just drives me crazy, because then I don't feel good. I have some energy, but I don't feel good. And then everything else goes crazy. So
I think I think one of the epiphany I'm having on this actually is not necessarily, I think we have this sort of black and white. Either you start from scratch and make everything, or you meal prep. And I tried meal prepping before, but day 3 into it, you're eating the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
What my wife has done is she's like, I don't know what you want for dinner, so I'm just going to get a bunch of ingredients and then you'll figure it out from there. And so last night we had a bunch of vegetables, some chicken breast, some quinoa. So I'm like, okay, I'll chop up some chicken. I can chop up some vegetables, put that in. 10 minutes later, we're eating. And I think the epiphany for me is we can prep the ingredients, because the prep part of the meal sometimes is the longest part, not the cooking of it, right? And so if I already have pre-chopped, like you said, shredded carrots, pre-chopped vegetables, pre-chopped things, I can just combine and go. It's not that difficult. That part seems to be, I think, the thing that we're settling in. That gives me the variety that I'm looking for. I'm not just having 4 and bless people that could do this. I wish I had the patience, but I can't just do brown rice and chicken or turkey burger in like a potato 4 days in a row. But if you give me variety of vegetables and proteins that are pre-cut, ready to go, that's much easier.
Exactly. You absolutely spot on, Kenny. When we say meal prepping, it doesn't mean you need to make lasagna for 3 days. For me,
Yes.
meal prepping, I think we need to be clear on that.
Yeah, but I think that's what people think when they think meal prep. It's
you're
so
right.
I have to have my, you see the videos, right? You got some yoked up dude making 9, of the exact same thing for the week, and you're like, oh my God, I want to poke my eyeballs out. I can't do that, right? So,
but you are spot on, and I'm so glad you're saying that, because meal prepping to me, in my language, is just having a little bit of broccoli in a Tupperware, but I don't want to eat this for 5 days. I want to change it all around. But for example, last night I've made and I compound my time. I'm like you, I don't have a lot of time. So when I'm cooking my dinner, I'm cooking something else that I'm going to have as a meal prep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to cook a couple of more vegetables, because I'm already thinking, okay, tomorrow lunchtime, there's 3 person in this house having lunch here, and plus a lunchbox. So I need to make sure I'm not only making for dinner, but I can add this, and that's making a meal. Okay.
yeah.
And
we
then
have a dog tax too, so we have to go a little to the dog. So it's
yes. So the dog is a specific
the rice gets a dog
meal.
tax. So
There's a complete tax.
2
on
and
it.
a quarter cups of rice. So
And I think you are spot on when you are mentioning a little bit of social media, because when you look at Instagram, you all see all of this food, and it's all looking incredible, and it's all looking like they have this incredible chef in the house. No, we need to stop this. It needs to be really simple, and then you can increase. So your quinoa salad, I'm saying quinoa salad, you please do not feel like you need to eat quinoa salad every day, but it's just what comes to my mind, okay?
Yeah.
I actually personally don't really like quinoa. I'm much more of a brown rice
the
person.
truth comes out.
I do
Breaking.
have it. But
we know.
That's the title of this podcast.
Episode.
Dirty secret. Karelle doesn't like quinoa.
Yeah, exactly. But
Watch
it's,
12 minutes in and she confesses her.
well, it's not because you're nutritionist that you have to like everything. We are just all the same. But okay, we're gonna say brown rice salad. So it can be just really simple. And then after you like at the supermarket, oh, there's edamame and they're already ready. Oh, I can add that to my salad. Oh, great! So you have one more food. And a week later, you're like, oh, actually, I really like to have, I don't know, it could be anything else like broccoli or whatever. Then you add to this, I can actually have some little little onions that I'm roasting. Adding to that, I can add mushrooms. So it doesn't have to be complex. It can be very simple. On my website, I've got a couple of recipes for meals, and I'm not trying to be a Jamie Oliver of athletic performance, but it's very simplistic recipes where it's like, oh, okay, great. There's like a bean salad. I can make that. This is easy. It's got 3 ingredients. Great. She's got a minced beef that she's adding a couple of spinach into it and red cabbage. I can do that. And I'll serve that with a brown rice or quinoa. Okay. And it's my goal, and that's how I work with my clients, is I'm not trying to sell a meal plan. It's to say, okay, where are you feeling comfortable? And we're slowly increasing that. So we're increasing the diversity, the nutrient density, and just keeping it simple, really simple.
So how do we break apart how much of what we need? So there's the whole thing on how much protein we need to be having as athletes, as much as 2 grams per kilogram of body weight, which is a lot. And then you also need to have a ridiculous amount of vegetables on top of that. So you end up like
Your body weight in water.
Salads that, like, I use a serving bowl for my salad bowl. I have a specific bowl that's just for me, that's bigger than every other bowl in the house because I can't fit everything in it.
No.
If I do it any other way.
And also I think different country would have different sizing of plate, without pointing any fingers.
Yes, the U.S. makes huge.
Yeah.
No, I have to get an Italian pasta bowl for my salad bowl because the American salad bowls are way too small.
Too small because it's
So I'm
like
just
a
gonna-
starter. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the plates are,
what is this?
Yeah, the plates are. So
plates
if we
are
look
massive.
at, and I've got that and I can send you the link, but if you look at a plate, the way I usually start to work before we look at how much you should have, because we tend to focus, again, like Kenny was saying, we tend to focus on the black and white. Okay, but so how much protein should I get? This is besides the point. The point is, what everything else, how is that fitting together on your plate?
Yeah.
What do you need to have as a normal functioning person? And being an athlete is also part of it, right? What should you have in your plate? So I always start with this work first because that helps to shift a little bit of taking the guilty part out. And rather than focusing on the numbers, we're focusing on visual aspect, and that stays longer. So looking at a plate, I usually would say you break this apart in 4 parts, just like a pie. Generous size, but not too much. It doesn't have to be too much. The goal is you need to be able to finish that plate. So don't go overboard. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the first quarter could be your leafy greens, your salad, your lettuce. And this is really important because if someone's trying to lose weight, I would sometimes see that this is the whole plate and there's only a little bit of carbs or a little bit of protein. So I need you to understand that this is a quarter and it's important to be present, but it doesn't have to be more than that. Okay. Because it's going to give you your magnesium rich food. It's going to give you, it creates the digestion. So it's forced you to chew as well. So it really helps you to create digestive enzymes in your digestive tract. Then you would have what we call the non-starchy vegetables. So the vegetables that grows above the ground. So they pour in sugar, super rich in vitamins and nutrients. So we can name a few like avocado, cherry tomato, onions, broccoli, cauliflowers. And depending on where you are in your nutritional journey, it could be 1 or 2 at the beginning, and it could be a diversity of 3 or 4, especially if you are good as preparing a few Tupperware, in advance. Mm-hmm. The more is the better here, but it doesn't have necessarily to be a half of the plate again. So I would say the half of the plate is the lettuce with this. Okay, so that's, you already have half of your plate with vegetables. Drizzle with olive oil, that's great. Then you have a quarter of your protein. 2 grams per body weight is too much. This is too much. And what I see sometimes is that people are focusing so much in getting the protein, then they don't eat the rest. So take that away from, the stress away from that, and look at a chicken breast. So I'm going to talk in grams. You're welcome to translate. I'm not great at this.
No, we're not. We're going to talk in grams because that's what we should be doing.
Because the folks in Germany want us to do that.
Okay, great. So if you look at a chicken breast, for example, it's about 100 grams when you buy a chicken breast in the shop in Europe. And that will give you 28 to 30 grams of protein. That's perfect for a meal. That's just perfect. You don't need to have more. Now, 10% minus 15%, that's okay. Some people would have a smaller appetite and their goal is going to be drastically different than another person. So depending on your goal, I would always refine that. But in the second stage, not in the first stage. This is too overwhelming. And then we have our carbohydrates. So it could be your pasta, your bread, or whatever, depending on where you are as well. But then we can tend to look into more complex carbohydrate. And that could be something like the brown rice, the quinoa, the pumpkin, sweet potatoes, etc. Now you would have people that are plant-based, and they obviously won't have the chicken. And for them, they may be wanting to combine legumes and grains, and together that's going to give them. So for these folks, we don't look at numbers, we don't look at quantities, we look at the quality of their protein, and that's far superior. So they won't necessarily have the ability to achieve the same amount of protein per body weight, but that's okay because they will get so much more out of those plant-based proteins. Sure. So that's a slightly different aspect to look into. But then you have your lovely plate, you drizzle olive oil, you can have and I think we spoke about that, what's palatable for you. It could be spicy for someone. Yep. For me, it has to be crunchy, so I put my seeds to it. And it could be whatever you think it works for you, right? And that's it. So that's a really nice balanced plate. So I would start with that. And then when you are later stage and specific demand or specific needs, then we can always target this differently.
I have a question about that, because I think there's always been, that's great when you have time and you're sitting down and you meal. I think I guess I need to ask, is it a myth or not a myth? Like, I do a good breakfast. I do some energy stuff during a ride. It's a 3-hour training ride. Right after my 3-hour training ride, my glycogen window is a glycogen window a thing and not a thing? And what, right after that, I'm sitting at a parking lot someplace, with my bike. What should I have with me right after that ride or that run?
No, you're absolutely right. So you've had your good breakfast, you go for your ride, you need to fuel during that ride, depending on how long that ride is. But if you say something like 3 hours, it's really important that you fuel regularly during that ride. I think we spoke about that, but we can really touch on again. Now, you have what we call the metabolic window. Okay. It's slightly different for men than women. It was a little bit controversial at some point, but what happens is because your insulin is quite high, you have the ability to absorb a lot more nutrient. And that's a really important opportunity because you can bank quite a lot of nutrient to replace here that you've lost. So the first thing is when you're in the car park, if you have a bit of a drive to go home, you could maybe have something that is like simple protein powder that you mix with some water. Look at a protein powder that could have a bit of carbohydrate and protein in there. That would be great. Then when you go home, you need to have a meal. So all of this could be within 45 minutes to an hour. And why is this important? Because that's going to impact your recovery. That is what's going to impact your recovery and potentially your cravings later in the afternoon. Yeah. And what I have seen in clinic working with athletes for over 5 years now is when this is compromised or this is rushed, then we usually have people being really hungry in the afternoon because
and that's me. And then I want to eat to Tom's point, then you start looking towards burgers or pizza or something that's just, you crave sort of fat and, you want to
because your body is signaling that it's missing something. So your adrenaline is sent absolutely to be like, okay, now you need to get me what I need. And what I need is not necessarily, the healthiest thing ever. Yes, because
so is there a certain amount? Sorry, is there a certain amount of protein versus carbohydrates that you need to have right after the workout?
Yeah.
What's our ratio? There's companies that sell you a 4-to-1 carbs to protein ratio. There's other places that say just go straight to protein. How do we?
Not going straight to protein because there's 3 elements of your post-workout recovery that are important. Your carbohydrate, that should be the immediate. And especially we're talking in the context of someone who's training for a race in the next coming week. So that means your volume is high. It means you are sometimes training twice a week, if not every day. Okay. So we're not talking about the person who's doing 1 session a week. This is slightly different approach. Now, for someone who has that training consistency, you need to have priority in carbohydrate. And because that's replenishing your glycogen storage. Otherwise, you feel your energy level being low. If not during that day, you'll feel it on your way to the next session the day after. And I often would have clients saying, I still haven't recovered. I had like a double day on Saturday and it's Tuesday. I'm feeling so tired. And it may be in the middle of a conversation, but I would be like, your recovery is not great. What have you done? What have we been eating? Oh, but I couldn't because I got home and then bang, the kids, I needed to drive them at the birthday party. So this is where anticipate. A lot of the part of our job as triathletes, and it's the anticipation. Do you have something ready when you come back? Is there something ready in the car? Do you have time to just get something in before? You have time to go for a shower before you go to work. So think about the food. It's a priority. Right? So carbohydrate is the number one. It could be between 20 gram to 30 gram, depending on the volume. I usually do a really targeted approach depending on the athletes as well. But that's going to help you replenish your glycogen storage. Okay. Then the second part, which that's where we know now that's a little bit more delays For men, it could be about 45 minutes to an hour. A lady, I would say 30 to 45 minutes, slightly shorter. And that's your protein. Because you need that for the repair. But the repair won't happen now. The repair will happen later. It's more of a, okay? So, and that's really,
and that's
really
when you eat the burger. No, okay. Sorry. Okay, burger bad. Got it.
Well, no, burger is not bad. You can make burger at home with nice beef and nice piece
the
of
ones
bread,
he's talking about are the monster 6,000 calorie.
It's chopped beef with
cheese.
quinoa. I get it. Eat the quinoa.
You don't have to.
This episode is brought to you by
Quinoa.
Quinoa farmer. and then you what's also really important is antioxidant, and aging is really important, because what happens is, so not aging, I'm going back, you produce energy in your Krebs cycle. When you produce energy, you have some byproduct of that energy production, what we call the scavenger. Okay, the free radicals. You need to be able to shuttle that back and potentially reuse them. And that's why antioxidants are really important. So in that smoothie, if you're home, you can add some blueberries, you can have some dark chocolate, you can have some, and that's where we often forget about this, because we just go, okay, carbs, protein. But the antioxidant is really important, because you have that build up of free radicals that, and I do a really interesting test that I often do with clients, like off season. So how is my numbers going? So it's called the metabolomic test. And we look at 5 or 6 different aspects in the body, elimination, detoxification, and inflammation, microbiome, etc. And one of them is your antioxidant. And often this is what we miss, the antioxidant part, because you have that buildup, that increase. And what is the result of that? We are aging, or you could have some other side effect in terms of buildup of free radicals. So really important not to think about that. So that's where you can have black chocolate.
There you go.
Or raw cacao.
Dark chocolate, yes.
Yeah.
We always have some dark chocolate in the house. Plus, there's usually a bowl of blueberries on the counter. Because I have a sweet tooth that I try to fight off. And I do pretty good with it until around the holidays, and then the Christmas cookies come out, and then all of a sudden it sends me skyrocketing. So I'm always trying to go by and grab some blueberries when I go through the kitchen, or some dark chocolate.
Okay, so we've done a great job on our prep. We've done a great job during training. We've ate our free radicals. We have more quinoa than we can count. It's race day. Right. And, we're looking at so let's assume sort of a longer race, like a half Ironman to a full Ironman kind of level of race. Lay that day out for us. How, I think we started this saying sometimes, I know I tried early on with gels. It just made my stomach go nuts. I'm trying to move towards whole foods on the bike, at least. What do you recommend as far as how that day should unfold?
So race day doesn't start as race day. I feel like I have to start here.
I kind of figured. Right? I teed this up for you. So
yes, you totally did. Race day doesn't start on race day. Race day starts 8 to 10 weeks before race day.
Thank you.
And I'm so glad that I'm on the same page.
Yes.
So that gel or anything else, if you come and work with me, Kenny, for example, you would start and say, oh, Karelle, I've tested this gel in the past, this one, it really doesn't work for me. So what we do together is you are doing your training, and I'm going to have a look at how much you're taking per hour. We all super different on this. And this is why it has to be very personalized. So you could come to me and say, well, 3-hour ride, Karelle, I've had just like maybe 1 or 2 bars and that's about it. But I'm doing fine on my training. Yeah. And that's where suddenly that same person would come to like 4 weeks. Oh, shoot, my race is in 4 weeks. I better try to have some gels. And this is like, sports nutrition is like religion. Everyone feels really empowered about their opinion when you talk with other athletes. And they always say, no, this gel is better than this one. But it's a very personal choice. It's like, we don't have a favorite color, or you don't have your same favorite food as me. I don't like quinoa. But it means that your gels needs to be, doesn't matter how well they're formulated. It needs to work with you. So one of the work we do when I'm working with athletes is it's our shopping day, we usually call it, is you try out. I want you to try 4 or 5 different brands. You try different and see how it's palatable to you. Do you like it? Do you like it when it's a neutral flavor? Do you like it when it's more of a berry flavor? Or do you like it when it's more punchy? How is that working for you? And are you able to take 2 or 3? Is it easy to open? Not easy to open? Yeah. And do you prefer maybe something in a bottle rather than gel? Do you prefer whole food? And we go through all of this as a personal choice because this is really important to help you prepare your nutrition race strategy.
Sorry to interrupt, but does weather count? Because I think sometimes when I'm dealing 90 degree, so I don't know how many Celsius that is, like 27.
Yeah, it's about 30. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's a different story than when it's, cooler into the early season, right? Is what, not just because of the sweat, but because you're really, really hot and you're cranky and to try to get another sweet thing in can sometimes be tough. Is that also a factor?
Yes. So what happens, it's all down to your stress response, which you may not have as much when you're training.
Okay.
Because if you're training, you may do like 2 or 3 hours. So you're able to have a bar, you're able to have whole food. Okay. So your saliva is still present. Now, your stress response, you remember how the fight or flight works, right? Yeah. I can see it's coming to you now. You're like, oh, now I know what's happening. Because your stress response is activated, your body is like, well, we don't need to digest food right now. We don't need to reproduce. We don't need to heal. We don't need the immune system. We don't need to be, fighting a cold, because clearly he's fighting for his life on his bike and he's racing at God knows who. So every blood cells are sent to your legs for you to, so to fight for your life. So what happens is saliva is reducing. The heat may be the pushing point at that moment for you, right? It could be that you haven't been drinking enough, but the saliva usually is a sign of you're having a fight or flight response, which you do in a race. So I always going to have clients who say, oh, but I'm fine to eat bars when I'm training. But then in the middle of the race, I couldn't eat anything. Then I didn't take any food. Because in a race, you don't have the same pressure that you have when you are on the training.
Makes sense.
So we talk about all of this because I'm saying if you have whole food, I want you to have it in the first hour. Don't even think about having it later in the race, right?
Got it.
That's okay. That's good to know.
Now, Tom, if you are saying to me, I'm going from Nashville to California on the bike and leisurely, and someone's following in there, it's different. You don't have the same stress because you are cruising. You're more of an adventure, right? So, but as soon as you have your stress response activated, your saliva is reduced, your digestion is reduced, and this is why we have more digestive upset during a race, or because when we are doing the training, I try to push athletes to that. So I would always try to, where you are at, increase 10%, 10%, 10%. And there will be a moment where I'm like, okay, I'm going to overload you this weekend. You're going to need to take this amount of food. I want you to come back to me and tell me how you've been feeling. Is this too much? And there is a moment where you're going to say, well, actually, Karelle, it was 2 gels too much. I was like, I hated you. Did you not hear me swear? And be like, because that's where we are. Then, okay, this is your threshold. I know that's your threshold.
By the way,
so we go under.
Epiphany number 2 on this show, right? One was the whole, prep meal. But absolutely, because I know I've seen that. I've seen other people do that where they feel really good on the training program. They think they got the fuel dialed down. They get to the race and it's like, I don't know what happened, but my stomach couldn't, because of this or because of that. Yeah. And, I think to your point, if the fight or flight's kicking in because of that pressure, now it's gotten from a 6 to an 8. Suddenly you're like, I thought I had my fuel dialed in, but some reason during the race, it just sort of, and it's like, I didn't take as much as I thought. And, maybe it was because I wasn't paying attention or whatever else, when in fact your body's, you're trying to figure out how to either understand what that 8 feels like or try to move you back down to a 6, right?
Exactly. Well, you can't really reduce stress because stress comes, on its own. Like you can be resilient to stress. The only thing you can do is anticipate. So a lot of the work that sometimes I would do is visualization. But when we work towards a personalized nutrition strategy plan, is we usually work to a point where I had a call this morning with an athlete who is just doing a race this weekend, and I've sent him his final plan last week, and I called him back this morning and I was like, okay, so how are you going? It's like, I'm all ready. It's all prepared. I've just had a ride. Like it's down to you. It's almost embedded in you at that point as you are coming out of the house, doing your shoelace before you go for, does it make sense? Because you know how if you start, and it's so interesting, there's a moment where you feel the switch where when you're not used to fueling during your effort and you're suddenly fueling, and if you, for example, fuel every 45 minutes, suddenly you look at your bike, oh my God, it's 45 minutes. How did I just perfectly timing? You're like, oh, I'm hungry. It's spot on. It's because we condition you to start doing that. So during the race, you already like conditioned, and you already know. So it doesn't feel as hard as someone who's practiced once or twice, if not at all, on their nutrition, or had practiced on something and hasn't actually tested the product that they use on the race, which that happens all the time, because you're like, oh, I didn't realize this race had this gel and not this gel. But we practice on this one.
we do what we practice. We do what we practice. So what we do repetitively every single day is what we're going to fall back to. We're not going to have any of this miraculous performance, or we're not going to eat better just because it's race day. We're going to fall back to exactly what our habits are. And that's where we kind of fall into that. I try to get athletes to test that out. And like you said, you can go and do shopping day. There's most of the manufacturers, the food manufacturers for the gels and stuff, they have sample packs. Like just go buy a whole bunch of sample packs of everything. You can find maybe this particular gel doesn't work for you because you tried the wrong flavor. Maybe the grape works for you, but the, margarita doesn't, right? So you go through and you try all of those and mark down what works, what doesn't work, make some notes so that you have that, get rid of the stuff that doesn't work for you. And then that's what you start pounding and going through. So I think I need to figure out a way to create that flight or fight response in my athletes during training. I think maybe if there's an app I create that I just yell at them constantly, they put their phone up, and I just scream at them constantly, we'll create that fight or flight, which will simulate race day. Maybe. I don't know.
I think what's important is it's really difficult to reproduce that. But what's really important is doing a lot of visualization. And in the last session or two sessions that I would have with clients is we go through that. What do you do on the way? Have you looked at your RISE guide? And we go through the RISE guide together. We go through sometimes the race. I've got an athlete doing an ultra in Verbier in Switzerland, and it's 170K. And we looked at when are we going to take our fueling? Looking at all of this helps an athlete to prepare the visualization. Okay, we're looking at full race. So you know how to change the tires? Oh, no, I don't. Okay, so what happens if you have a puncture? Well, I'm screwed. No, you sit down tomorrow, you go at home and you try to change your tires. It's going to take you 15 minutes. What is 15 minutes on a 3-hour race? Or 6 or 7 hours if it's a full? It's nothing. 16, it's nothing. So do that. And what is stressing you about this race? Well, I'm stressed about all of this. And then we'll look at that, because I think there's a whole part of that anticipation of stress where when it comes to you during that moment, you're like, well, I'm prepared for that. I'm prepared for that, right? I've lost my bottle, but I'm prepared for that.
So you're responding instead of reacting to the stress. And we talked about that in a podcast just recently.
There you go.
Where that's part of it. Like I try to go with my athletes. I do the same thing. We talk about everything's good. We're set up. Okay. Now, what happens when your goggles get kicked off your face? What happens if you get hit in the swim? What are you going to start thinking about all the bad things that can happen, not in a way to get you all riled up to think about it. You stress about it. But think about it's like, well, what would you do? I don't know. We're in a nice, calm environment now. What would happen if my goggles got taken off? Well, I would slow down and stop, grab onto whatever, put my goggles back on, and then continue. Same thing with flat tire. How do we deal with things that could happen? You just have to anticipate it. It knocks that stress response down when it actually, if it does actually happen during
because
the race.
things do happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I've
think
raced
that's
enough
absolutely
to know that things do happen. I've done just a cycling Grand Fondo last year. We all got lost. We all got lost.
Yeah.
I don't know who the hell was at the front, but at some point I was like, it's weird because my GPS keeps saying, and then I was talking, it was like the first 10 kilometers. And then suddenly people turned around and I was just laughing, thinking,
Oops.
we just added 10 kilometers to our,
Nice.
But it means that, then I was really cross with myself because I was like, actually, I knew the road and I knew the GPS was right. So why on earth was I following everyone? And all of this shouldn't make you stress on the moment if you prepared for that. If you're okay, well, it's a mistake. I mean, move on. Now we need to move on. We are the rest of the race and I need to make sure I fuel regularly because I've got 10 kilometer extra on the 100, right? So it means that you need to plan for that. So and
I think the part that's, I think, difficult for a lot of people, isn't necessarily to, I put the plan together, the plan's working, if it goes awry for any reason, that's one thing. We've talked a lot about, RPE, rate of perceived effort, right? So, I trained for Ironman California. Everything was great. I get there. There's a 40-mile-an-hour headwind. And so I could try to force my speed or force whatever, but I looked at my watts and my rate of perceived effort and said, whatever the mileage is going to be. I think part of the problem when people get in trouble, they don't, what does it feel like when you start to ooze on down, that bonking route? So how do I think that's the part people don't realize they're bonking until in the middle of bonking, right?
Yeah.
So are there
I
early
often have that
indicators,
question.
Are there early indicators to say, hey, I may be starting down a danger zone. How do I course correct? Right. Because I can look at my heart rate on the physical side, and how do you start? That's my biggest challenge, right? It's almost like rut row, and now I'm already in that bonk zone, or, I may be too dehydrated because I'm starting to fall apart, or my RPE is going up on what shouldn't be. It was a similar thing. What are those signs? How do I know if I'm starting to slide a little?
It's interesting because when I do podcast or record it, it's often a question I have. How do you tackle bonking and how do you anticipate? The first question is, again, it needs to be, you need to fuel regularly during that race. Yep. If you fuel regularly and you put a plan together with me, for example, there shouldn't be any bonking because I usually wouldn't plan for that.
Yeah.
Now, when it happens, and it can happen in a race or it can happen on training, it means that ultimately your brain, for sure at that moment, has a perceived reduce of glucose coming up. So that's where you're starting to feel like, oh, this is really hard. I'm not sure I can do it. The heat is getting to me. That bloody wind, seriously, that wind again. Actually, I feel that the time you need to fuel straight away. Do not, this is where you can adapt the plan. The plan is there, but it doesn't matter. If I said to you, you need to fuel every 40 minutes, then if you feel like you're bonking, and there could be multiple reasons, even if you had a great plan, but there could have been a climb of 18% that we didn't anticipate it because they changed the route or it wasn't on the plan or anything.
Yeah, or the water was super choppy and now I'm on the bike and
exactly. So you need to fuel earlier and you need to adjust your nutrition plan and probably take a little bit more. Don't take 4 gels in a row, but maybe instead of 30 minutes, I'm going to try every 20 minutes and then I will come out of this because you will come out of this. Yeah. So at that point, it's a power of your mental to be able to, and I remember many years ago, there was Frodino when he was doing Kona and one of the Kona he was struggling and I was listening to a podcast with him and something that I carried a lot in races when I struggle where it's like, you have pain. Okay, my knee is starting to hurt or I'm starting to feel really like it's hard. And his thing was on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard is this? Or how much is my knee hurting? And then you go into your mind and you you really dive deep into that. And then by the time you finish, you're like, oh, I don't feel my knee anymore. Okay, we keep going.
Here we go.
And it works every time. So find tricky, tricks that are helpful to you, and you use them on training. And I would always say, don't train with music. Train without music, because you need to be comfortable in the uncomfortable. If you only meet yourself for the first time in a race, if you only discover who you really are for the first time in a race, it's really hard to do that on a race.
Yeah.
You need to discover yourself and enjoy that company, enjoy this little discussion of, okay, I keep going a little bit further, and then, or whatever happens in your mind in a race, because that's the fun part, right?
Yeah.
That's the fun part of racing. It's all of this layer you take away of your personality at the beginning. And one of the races in Colombo I did, it was Julie Moss was doing a talk, and she said, at the beginning, we all care about how we look, like, especially women. I don't know about you guys, but, the color of your tri-suit and how, do you have your nails done and your hair
You're
looking
peacocking
good?
the whole time.
Yes.
That's it. And then as you go along, you start to lift the layers, and nobody care at some point how we look.
100%. You got snot coming out of your thing. You don't care, right?
Exactly. And I thought it was a really good description, because you read, and that's also part of training, right? Yeah. It's also part of finding those moments where it resonates to you. What works to you when you are struggling and you have a 20K run and you really don't want to do it, and all you think about is the 4 emails that you haven't been able to reply to. So it's really important to find these moments.
I love that. Don't
training.
Discover yourself on the day of racing.
On race day.
That is there's the title right there, right?
That self-talk that you have for race day needs to be trained. It needs to be consistent with your training to go through, so that you know how you're going to get yourself out of the bad times, because you will have those lulls. Yeah. And the longer the race, you'll have more of them, and they might be steeper cliffs that you're going to fall off at that point.
But you always come back up.
You always come back up. You're always going to get through it. Yeah. You just have to know that you're going to get through it, and you have to get that part of training. People always ask me on my runs, my long runs or my long training, what's going through my head. And it's just, I'm just running head to toe a systems analysis, going like, okay, that hurts a little bit. Okay. This, okay, that's normal. Yeah. No, hip. Yeah, that's fine. Little cramp. Is that a cramp? No, not a cramp. Okay. It's good. And I'm just like, you go head to toe, head to toe, head to toe. I'm just constantly checking my systems as they're going through. So why is my elbow hurting today? Right. It's like, am I doing something with my run? Okay. No, that's good. I'm checking every level of everything, and it gets to a certain level of discomfort, and that's normal. Yeah. And that normal pain level I know is normal, and the longer the run is or whatever. And I go, okay, that's great. And I just wait for it to kind of peak past that. As soon as it starts peaking past that, then I know, like, okay, this is something to keep an eye on. But it's all through the training. It's all what you do in your training every day that you get comfortable with certain levels of discomfort. And you just rely back to that piece again. So
exactly.
Yeah. So what I like to tell, when people ask me, like, how do you do these endurance sports and, how do you survive that long? It's not necessarily, you get to a level where you get to this plateau, and that's where you really want to be at. It's not going to get any better, and you hope it doesn't get any worse. And that's where you're going to be. You're either going to be at this pain threshold or this fatigue threshold or whatever that is, that plateau, just stay there. And then if it starts popping up because of fuel, because of water, because that becomes a problem. But ultimately, you just want to be there, right? Where, to your point, your knee may be acting funky, but it's a level 4 and it's going to get any worse. So now you're just going to get used to a level 4 pain for a while. And I think that's sort of what people that don't do these endurance sports understand. It's not this linear thing that goes all the way up and then, you get to pain level 100 and hope you get to the finish line. You get to that fatigue level where, with any luck, it doesn't get any worse, but it's certainly not going to get any better. And you got to be comfortable with that.
I definitely don't think I'm at the highest pain level. I think, when I hear athletes that are
it's discomfort.
winning races,
It's really discomfort.
Yeah.
We talk about being comfortable, being uncomfortable, and it's basically what's your level of discomfort.
Yes.
We're not talking stabbing, sharp pain, that type of stuff. That's completely different. This is a level of discomfort that's so uncomfortable. Whereas, and your training builds that, right? Your training builds that level of discomfort of what you can manage and what you know is, okay, this is just the brain warning you way early. And you push through it, and you just raise that threshold of what you're able to endure, and that's why I don't know. Some of us do these sports. It's just to push ourselves and see how much further we can go.
It's really interesting because depending on the same athletes could go through different challenges in their lives, and there's moments where they can't cope with that same discomfort. During a race, and it's okay to then race at a different level and then come back to it after you've had those challenges because we are whole, right? We're not compartmentalized, and you're not just an athlete, but you're also a human being. If something is going wrong at work and you are under a lot of pressure, or if it's at home, then you can't have the same level of discomfort when you're racing, and it's okay because next year can be different. And next year, you're going to smash it.
Well, or, Tom and I have been preaching on all these episodes, right? Good, my printer came. That was my...
Sorry, could you hear that?
Yeah. That was my bill. It's a small amount.
Just sliding right in.
But I think it's really important that it's like, if you don't have the mental, you may not want to be physically want to put yourself through that for 12 hours because your why isn't there anymore, right? But it's perfectly okay. It's not that you're settling for a sprint or you're settling for an Olympic distance or you're settling for another one. It just means that maybe I just like the idea of going fast for a short amount of time for a while because I just want to mix it up a little bit. That it's not, I can't do a full, so therefore I'm just going to do a half. It's not just a half. It's you approach it differently. It's a half. Or it's not just a sprint. Go have fun. And maybe you want to look at fast twitch muscles instead. So try to frame it in a way that it's like, my why was here. I'm okay. My why matches my suffer level. I'm okay with that. Right. I think I want to, I'm that way, right? I did the Ironman, a half for me that's a nice why and a nice suffer level, right? Where I'm at in my life kind of deal. Or I may want to go shorter distance and just go fast. I want to go fast and short because that'll be fun. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And that's okay.
Or switch to a different endurance sport.
Yeah. Yeah. And then just kind of get used to
it.
Yeah,
stop it.
And who is not doing high rocks at the moment?
Oh my God, me.
I am actually.
I'm not yet.
November in Chicago, I'm going to go do high rocks. So because I needed that. I needed that switch up, right? I needed that. What's 180 beats for an hour and a half, and I'm going to go lift heavy crap. So it'll be fun. So
So for fueling for our races? We talk about whole foods. We started talking about whole foods and getting in this thing, and we had the epiphany here that the whole foods on your racing and your training probably should be in the first hour or so, and then switching out after that. What are good whole foods that will get us what we need? Because we need glucose, we need sugar, we need carbs. Is it complex carbs? Is it potatoes? I've always done little red potatoes or something on there every so often, but I've tried it later in the race and it hasn't worked quite as well. Now I know why. What can we do to fuel ourselves a little bit more naturally, or at least mix up our palate?
Yes, so let's look at all the food that you could have during exercise. So you could have from unprocessed, so would be whole food, you can have potatoes, sweet potatoes. But I think that is, the question is always, what are you expecting from this race? Are you expecting to, and I always ask this question when I have new clients and they're signing up for a race. So what are you just looking to have fun and exercise, find something in the race? Are you expecting to be qualifying for World Championship? Are you expecting to do a great time? This will then allow you to make the decision about the nutrition you want. If you are saying to me, Karelle, I'm doing my first full Ironman and I'm really hoping to qualify for Kona, I'll be like, well, whole food may not be the right approach because you want to know exactly how much we're taking, and we need to dial that. We can't leave anything to the last minute surprise. Okay. So then if you are doing an ultra, or if you are doing a trail run, if you are doing something that is slightly different, then your pace will be also different. Then you are it's almost easier to have whole food. Okay, so whole food has its place on the race day, and the positivity is not always sweet, so you don't always have that sweetness in the mouth. You can also have things that are a little bit more neutral on that aspect, or salty food, people would say, but it's just like, so you could have peanut butter sandwich, you could have like you say, the potatoes, sweet potatoes. A lot of people would try different things. There's compote as well, fruit puree. I'm always really careful with a lot of fibers during the race, because fibers, not because it's going to make you want to go to the bathroom often, but fiber it's the opposite of what we say in day-to-day nutrition. If you increase your fiber intake, it's going to balance your blood sugar. So what you're going to do in the race, if you increase fibers, it's going to buffer that blood sugar, right? So it means you don't have blood sugar as high. So
and
you
want that. You need it for the racing.
You need that. So your blood sugar needs to be lower when you are day to day. When you are in a race, you want it to be higher because you're constantly having to. So there's positive and negative, and this needs to be really looked into detail. The frequency, how often you're eating, perhaps rotating between, chews and whole food, or etc. In perspective of races where you're more of a tempo, I would say maybe a zone 3 or 4, you won't be able to digest for very long or to chew for very long. We talked about that with the saliva. So therefore, you could try to do this at the beginning of the race if you want. And then move on to perhaps bars and gels, and then you have your powder. This would be in this order. Okay. But I think it takes a lot of experience and discipline and trying to have whole food before you can experience that in a race, because it's very, very difficult to know how is that going to be. If you have whole food, you need to eliminate it as well. So does it make you want to go to the bathroom more regularly? Is that going to trigger more GI distress? Equally. So it really depends of the race. It depends of the athlete.
Yeah. For my ultra races, the runs especially, I shared with you before, my favorite ultimate food, the ultimate superfood is pancakes. And there's absolutely nothing better. I will stand by this, that at 2 a.m. running through the woods in the middle of the night with a small stack of pancakes in your hand, eating that is the most amazing experience on the world. And it powers me through till sunrise. So it's great. Not so good during an Ironman.
No, exactly. And races like that, because you are for obviously longer hours, we're talking 20 hours and more plus. Was ultra. What's the goal is that it needs to be palatable. The goal is you need to get food in. Yeah. So you would often see, it depends how fast people are going. And I'm always completely blown away when you see, in the Barclays or races like that, when they sit down for 10 seconds, change their sock, at the same time they're eating 2 slices of pizza. Yeah. But because it needs to be palatable. Now, we're not all at the same level. But it's also really interesting, because then you're like, oh, wow, they're eating pizza? But it needs to be palatable. So it doesn't matter what you're eating at that moment, because the goal is that you get food in.
Yeah.
Yes.
You need to get food in. And for you, the pancake is what gets you to eat.
Yes.
For someone else, it is a pizza. So it really doesn't. Yeah. Not that I'm saying it should be.
But to your point, it's better to get calories in. So, you're not minding your cholesterol in the middle of a race. You're not like, what is my fat count? You're like, I need fuel.
We need calories.
Right. And if that's the thing that gets me to fuel, then that's the thing that gets me to fuel. Right.
We need glucose. So, we need glucose. We need to get that. That's what our muscles need. And the faster, the shorter the race, the more you need that. Right. You need that for sure.
Yeah. The back half of Ironman Arizona, it was Coca-Cola and chicken broth.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. So Coca-Cola it's funny. I was talking about it with Well, and it's a really good way after a big break, if you have a big training block the next day, to replenish your glycogen storage. And people often say, really? You saying Coca-Cola is okay? Yes,
it's a miracle
you
drug.
get 30 grams straight in. I'm not saying you should drink Coca-Cola every day, but I think, again, we can't be always black and white. There is things out there that are available. So to your point, if you have your break that is 20 minutes or half an hour drive away, get a Coca-Cola in at that moment on the way home. Then you get your protein.
Always in my cooler.
That's it.
From the big race, from the big event, or right after a race, the first thing I want is an 8-ounce can of Coke. Yeah. I have it in the cooler. If I'm doing like a 5, 6, 7, 8 hour bike training day, like first thing that I have when I finish is stop and I chug the whole Coke and like I feel so much better. And then I get in everything.
Yeah, I never drink Coke, only if I'm on the bike.
There you go. Only racing. Only during races or the heavy training right afterwards. Otherwise, I'm not drinking sodas any other time.
And broth it's so good because broth has a lot of nutrient, and it's going to be that not sweet but more salty flavor.
Yes. Yeah.
So for a lot of people, broth could be. With my athletes in Singapore, there's always a track session that is quite late on the Tuesday evening, and a lot of the athletes that I work with often say to me, "Oh, the Tuesday, I always by the time I get home it's 9. So what do I do? I'm not hungry." And it's always the one that I'm suggesting: just get a broth. Go and have your shower, because it's just certainly going to open your appetite, but then you're getting in all those really nice nutrients, especially rich in sodium. So if your climate is really hot, then you rebalancing and getting that really good electrolyte. And again, it's not a sweet thing that you're getting in at that moment. Correct. So it really is helpful. So broth is good one.
Broth is great. Yeah. So good. So we had a couple epiphanies. We've learned a whole bunch more. So Karelle, thank you. This is always fun.
This is always fun.
I have you back on again because I know we can talk about lots more. We're trying to deep dive in on some things for our training to get us eating better, eating right, and certainly figuring out our meal prep and getting through the week. So we always appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I've just wrote a few blogs on the website, Tom. I think maybe they would be interesting just at the time of the seasons. And they're really targeted for athletes as well. So how do you, very similar to what we talked about, but I think sometimes it's quite good to read that quietly.
Good. I'll add those to the show notes for sure. I'll make sure that gets on there. Yeah. She's got a lot of really good recipes on there as well. I still do the egg bake one. The egg muffin bake that you have on there is really fantastic. So try out some of the recipes on there. They're really simple, easy to make. They taste great. And we'll put your website and all your contact and Instagram stuff, as we usually do, in the show notes and all of that. Everybody, thanks for tuning in and listening. If you're following on YouTube or any of the audio version of this, we appreciate all your feedback. So if you got questions, comments, please let us know. I think on our Buzzsprout thing, you can text us directly, plus email, Instagram, Facebook. I try to get to the messages. Sometimes I find ones that are out there that I just didn't realize that you sent a message, and I try to get back to you when I can. But please keep that up. Let us know what you want to hear. Give us 5 stars, thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe so that we drop new episodes, you'll know about it right away. So, Karelle, again, thank you so much. And Kenny, always fun. Everybody, we'll catch you on the next one.